So what is your views on vaping for adults? Okay, vaping, from what I've learned and understood, again, I always like to say that because it just depends on where I get my information from, right? Made a video about the Amazon on the xisumasays channel. I thought it was reasonable, the information that I got, and I read through the comments and found some people sharing vastly different information. But the reality is, they're all just these websites that seem like credible news sources, and they're all just giving you different information. It's all very difficult and time consuming to discern which is truthful or not. But anyway, of the things that I've heard about vaping, vaping seems to be not particularly healthy, but not terribly well researched either. I mean, we've got an absolute arsenal of research on why smoking is bad, right? Vaping, not so much. And there's some that suggest it's good, but generally when they're saying it's good, they're saying it's a good alternative to smoking. And good and bad are, you know, words that kind of pivot around points that can move about on a scale. If you are a smoker, smoking a lot, and you downgrade to vaping, let's say, chances are that's probably a good decision, but not as good as quitting completely, is it? So, of what I've learned of vaping, it's kind of not terribly well researched in the long term, but in the short term, the effects are clearly better than smoking if you were to choose between doing one or the other. The thing is, though, you are inhaling water vapor into your lungs with other chemicals inside of it, flavoring, nicotine, and that is just not good. That's just not a natural thing that you're supposed to do. How bad it is, I've seen just so many different opinions on how bad it is. Some people think, mainly people in the vaping community, downplay how negative it could be, and people outside of it tend to, you know, speak of it quite critically, this activity of inhaling vapors into your lung. But I think the one thing we should be able to agree on is that it's clearly a negative from not doing it. And as a tool for helping you quit smoking and get off of it, it's really good. But then again, it's also becoming something that people pick up, especially young people, before they even smoke. I say before they smoke, you know, we don't want them to smoke, but that I think is really negative, that you would pick up such a bad habit like vaping when it should be used probably medicinally to get you off of smoking. Now, I'm not trying to like infringe on anyone's right to do what they want with their body and say you should or you shouldn't vape. I'm just looking at it from a sort of broad outside perspective, that people are picking this up as a thing. You know, it's like taking up smoking. They're taking up vaping. And I think that's really bad. I think vaping could be great as a tool to get you off of smoking, and that if you turn to vapors, you should have a strategy to eventually get off of the vapors as well. But yeah, the fact that kids are picking it up and it's been marketed to children, and when I say children, like stories of quite young people vaping, you know, under 12 I've heard of, although sometimes things get exaggerated. All the flavorings and stuff kind of aim at kids as well, and that stuff's finally starting to get caught up through legislation. I've heard a few stories coming through of individual states starting to outlaw certain flavors of vaping, and basically you're not allowed to advertise them because kids are picking them up. They're treating them like candies, you know. Under 12 question mark, says Nonstop B. Yes, I watched a thing because I watch lots of stuff and then I can't really particularly tell you where it comes from. Maybe in the future, as we develop this xisumasays thing, I'll start to keep note of some sources of information. Might be a good idea. But I watched some stuff on vaping, and they were talking about high schoolers vaping, and then they said even people below high school have been known to vape. Now, if that's, you know, like the one or two stories getting blown out of proportion, or if it's an actual trend that's happening, it's certainly alarming. But in high school, they're certainly popular to do vaping, and that's kind of not good. My friend is 11 and he vapes, says Streamer. I think everyone here can agree that is alarming. You know, if that was smoking, we'd be outraged, but because vaping is kind of new, we're not entirely sure what to think of it, it seems. Haley Bailey says, I've seen under 12 smoke cigarettes, to be honest, so I'm not surprised. Yep, very good point, actually. I can certainly think of seeing people under the age of 12 smoking. Badger says my mum started smoking when she was 11. So yeah, I think it's just think of it how we know that young people have smoked. We've all heard the stories. You know, everyone's probably watched interviews with people. I can't think of anyone specifically, but I've definitely seen, you know, maybe actors or rock stars in an interview talking about smoking at a young age. Was it Corey Taylor I heard recently talking about smoking at 10? Something like that. So we know those stories are out there. Maybe it's a small percentage, but we know that there are kids smoking at that age, so surely there's going to be kids vaping as well. How do we go through a generation of smoking, realise it's absolutely horrible, and then start inhaling more stuff? Did you learn nothing at all, says Pig Puncher. Have you heard the phrase that history repeats itself? You know, that's a really good phrase because I don't think it repeats itself in exacts, but things happen over and over again. There's always been trends of people doing things that are harmful to themselves, and I think it's just the way, as technology grows and as we take control of our own environment, we do these things that are non-natural without really exploring the consequences of them because they're not immediate. No one experiments with trends of jumping off of cliffs because the consequences are immediate, but when we can't see the consequences and they're invisible, unfortunately, we tend to make the same mistakes over and over again, hence history repeats itself. So in a way, it's kind of not that surprising that something like this could happen. The ads on YouTube about vaping are annoying because most of them are poorly researched, says Kafton. Yeah, I mean, if they're pro-vaping, like I really do think it's hard to be pro-vape because the long-term research isn't there and the short-term research is saying not as bad as smoking. As opposed to, yeah, this is fine, go ahead and do it. You know, it's clearly not. You're inhaling water vapors. Your lungs weren't evolved for that. Anyway, to sort of wrap up this segment on vaping, what I would say to anyone who does vape, even smokes, we know smoking's bad. As for vaping, why take the risk? Why take that risk? Ask yourself. You know, I can understand that vaping can be pleasurable, but when pleasure derives from little activities to feed that kind of dopamine rush at that level, that's not a particularly long-term strategy for reward, is it? You know, your own personal health is a long-term strategy for reward because you can enjoy that for a long time. It can help you live long, and you know, I think risking it at a young age, or at any age really, it's not a great strategy.